and welcome to episode 4 in the IdeaCast interview series. Today, I'm happy to present Sophie Nolis. And Sophie, in her earlier years, had a career in IT and finance procurement, and in her private life, she was a practitioner of yoga and mindfulness, and she was able to successfully transition over to owning her own business and bringing that passion for yoga and mindfulness into the business, as well as coaching, life coaching and career coaching. And more recently, Sophie added Sophrology to her practice, and that's why I've brought her on the show today. I discovered Sophrology about a little over a year ago, and this is spring 2021, and have been curious ever since, and was seeking out somebody who could define and describe sophrology, and Sophie was a perfect choice to do that, and we had a beautiful conversation, and I invite you to join me as I explore sophrology, its history, its constituency in terms of the system, and we also talk about mindfulness, teaching children yoga, and a bunch of other things that I know you're going to enjoy. So join me in having this beautiful conversation with Sophie Nolis. And welcome to Sophie Nolis, and we are going to have a really cool and amazing conversation about sophrology, which is, until very recently in my life, something that's just completely alien to me, and I want to learn more. And Sophie is going to present that story of sophrology to us, and I'd like to start in sort of the beginning with Dr. Caicedo, and we'll go from there and bring it up to present times. So Sophie, what can you tell me about the provenance of sophrology?
Sure. Thanks, Justin, and thanks for having me on.
Oh, absolutely.
So sophrology was developed actually in the 1960s. It's quite new in Western countries like America, Australia, here where I am. Professor Caicedo sort of developed sophrology. He was a neuropsychiatrist and was working with post-war veterans they were coming back from war, suffering PTSD, and at the time they were medicating, and he felt there must have been a better way. So he started looking into just the psychology of what was happening and developed sophrology, which actually means it means the study of consciousness in harmony. So he was married to a yoga teacher at the time and got very interested in the techniques of yoga, Buddhism, and then so the sophrology was developed with Eastern philosophies in mind and the Western science. So how he started to work with clients, and he noticed a big change was getting them to experience happy moments in their lives and then feeling the physical sensations that those happy moments would bring in the body. So connecting, bringing in the 5 senses and really connecting the body to what was happening in the mind, the thoughts, the experiences, the visualizations that we're having and that the client was having. So once he connected those, he realized that he could get the clients to notice where the happiness sensation was actually feeling. That feeling was sitting in the body. And once they could understand that that was a feeling in the body that was connected to the mind, they could bring on that feeling at any other time, because then it wasn't about the content so much as far as, what you're visualizing as a happy moment. It was more about the feeling in the body. So he went from there and developed 4 levels at first, and now there's 12 levels of sophrology. So, and now he was from Spain, moved to Switzerland, and then in the 70s, he worked with another doctor, Professor Schultz, and he took sophrology. He studied with Caicedo and then took sophrology into the sporting arena and used it for development of professional athletes, first in the Winter Olympics, and worked with the France ski team. And it was very known that he worked with 4 athletes and 3 came out with gold. So and it was all about the mindset. It was all about understanding the physical sensations of the body when pressure comes on, or whether it's stress or anxiety. And then, so the sophrology levels are broken down into, you start with the present, And then as you go deeper into the levels, you'll look at the future in visualizations, and then you'll look at the past, and then you look at all is one and how we are connected. And we also look at the biology as well. He sort of developed on the science side, looking from the skin. So looking at the cells and the molecular structure of the skin, and then going into the muscles, then the bone, and then the spirit. Okay. So you sort of get an idea of how you're reacting to life rather than life is happening to you as you go through the sessions. And the whole idea is that it's a continuous practice. So with a one-off practice, you might feel better, you might do 2 sessions and feel great, but the reality is you go back to your life and back to those environments, and you might feel great for a while, but if your habitual programs are as such to, and things get triggered, and then you end up going back into past thoughts that then create the same sensations that you went to this first session for in the first place, then that is potentially going to happen again, unless you really practice and you really change those neuro pathways in the brain.
It seems like a wonderful way to cultivate self-awareness, through a very low resistance path of essentially, and having watched you lead a meditation, it was a body part oriented or body part awareness induction, I guess. Is that the right way to put it? You're bringing people in. And
sorry.
No,
you
go
do
ahead.
Into a very relaxed state. So it's in between that awakened sleep state. So we refer to it as the subliminal state, but it's the subconscious mind that we work with. So in that state, once your body is relaxed, your mind is still calm and alert. So it's still taking in all the information. So what we try to do is get you to understand where you're feeling the feelings in the physical body. So we have something called an integration pause, and this is something that Caicedo-based sophrology, one of the main components of sophrology is to stop and pause. As you go through an exercise, you will then stop and pause and understand how the body is actually feeling in that present moment after having done the exercise. So whether we call it dynamic movement, which is really movement within relaxation. So whether you've just done some movement or whether you've done a visualization, depending on what we're working on, you stop and you always pause, and you integrate what's happening, the thought process and how it connects to the body. So whatever physical sensations you're actually feeling, whether it's a temperature, whether it's a weight, you feel like your legs are getting heavy, you start to really notice what is happening in the body. So, and what I notice, because during the study, I would practice, and I still do every day. You have a practice of 20 minutes. And so you go through your own thoughts, your belief systems, your own habitual patterns of the past, and you start to observe as you go deeper into the sessions, as you practice sophrology, you really start to become the observer to how you're behaving. So in a situation where I may be triggered, because it's life. Yeah. Life happens constantly. So if I'm in a situation where something is triggering me, I'll feel it in my body before I react. So I have that pause. I've taught myself to have a pause before I actually react, and I can reflect before I react. So generally, the outcome is going to be a lot calmer, a lot, I just think a lot more harmonious for the people or the environment involved, it gives you space and time, which we don't give ourselves a lot of.
Oh, absolutely. And you had also referenced in another interview, and you mentioned subliminal, but I think they coined their own proprietary sophroliminal, and I love that because it's like you said, it's the alpha state, it's that sort of in between, really deep induction state that a hypnotherapist might bring you into, and I do some things that I call hypnotations, which are probably similar to that, but I like that as a mind model, sophroliminal, when you're doing this related work, because it really distinguishes itself and gives you that focus, I think, before you go into the session.
Yeah, there's actually a really good reason why Professor Caicedo actually introduced new words. So within sophrology, we're always saying new words. So people are always asking the question, what does that mean? The reason is because you can't come in with prejudged ideas. So the judgment, we ask people, there's 4 attitudes to sophrology, and one is hold all judgments, the first one. Because when you can come into something as if it's for the first time, which is another attitude, like with curiosity and wonder, as if it's a first time, like you're a child having a first experience, you're not bringing in anything from the past. So even something that we work on, we break the body down into 6 systems. And within those systems, we release tensions. So the first system would be here. And so we call it a nerve plex. And we release from these areas. And the reason why we don't say, we don't use words that come from other modalities is because we don't want you to come in and go, I know what that is, and I'll do it this way. Because it allows people to actually experience as if the first time. And that's where you're going to have the best experience. So you allow you to just be in it.
Right. And I noticed when I first started researching sophrology, I was watching actual exercises being carried out, and people were like, now you're third center. And so I immediately thought, the energy center chakra thing. But this is distinct from that, but perhaps in a loose way, be corollary to that, but not to be confused.
It is like we're working in the same areas, but we're just terming it differently to allow you to just not have that judgment. So you can experience it for the first time, because otherwise you're bringing in whatever other modalities you've done, which is absolutely fine unless you've chosen to come to sophrology because other things weren't working. And then you already have an existing idea of what you're going to get from this or not get from this. So it's really the 4 attitudes are no judgment, put in brackets all your preconceived ideas, thoughts, and beliefs, and experience this. The third is as if it's for the first time. So like a child coming in with curiosity and wonder. And then the 4th attitude is what you'll experience is the aliveness. So it's being in that present moment. If you can do the first 3, then you experience the aliveness. And that's really the physical sensations that you're feeling, because when you're feeling in the present moment, you're very much alive. And you're experiencing that.
Do you find that, and I'll sort of shift off the, not quite the topic, but where we were with the historical discussion of sophrology, when you're working with clients and we talk about present moment being, do you find that through sophrology that it's more salient for them, or it's more accessible? Because we, even in the new age circles or the energy work circles, you see a lot of people, it's an aphorism, be in the present, be in the now. But when you really can exercise that it's a phenomena, it's actually because it is the reality. I mean, I like to say that the past and the future are just movies you watch, or trailers to movies you might watch or something like that. But to really get deep into the idea of being present, do you find that they have that sophrology facilitates that that keen awareness that all we ever really have is the now moment?
And I think it's because you're actually experiencing something, and you're bringing your mind, that your mind is so powerful. So when you train your mind to come into the experience, and in a good way, to just observe the experience that's happening in the body, you really, you're not trying to gather information from other places. You're just going inward in a real simple fashion. So I do believe it's very accessible. I work with kids, I work with adults, and it can suit everyday life, because it's the type of, I guess I'll call it an experience as you're having it, because it's been developed to be done on a daily basis. It's been developed to do with your everyday life. You do it sitting in a chair. You don't need any props. You don't need a mat. You don't need anything. You can just sit in a chair, sit comfortably, and be guided. You can either use headphones or come in and do a live session. And the idea behind that is, in your daily life, you can close your eyes and you can have certain experiences that you've been trained to do in a session. So you can go inward and just scan the body, learn how to scan the body. So everything is accessible. You could go for a walk and scan your body. You could go for a walk. And this is something I love that I learnt. I'd never done this in any other modality, and I've trained in a lot of different things. Going for a walk, and starting to really focus on your senses. So as you're going for a walk, you start with maybe vision, and you really start to notice, I mean, how many times, in life do you go for a walk and you're walking down the same street, and then all of a sudden you look up and you notice a new building, but it's been there the whole time. There's so much on automatic pilot, and we're, at least 95%, most of us, in the day in a program. So to go for a walk and say, I'm just going to focus on my vision, for 2 minutes, you really come into the present moment, and you start to, it's like the colors become more vibrant the more you practice that. And then switch, go to sound, go to hearing, and listen out. Especially, it's beautiful to do this in nature, obviously, because then you hear the sounds of the birds, and everything is amplified because you're putting your energy into that sense, and creating something in your body that feels good. So, and then you can switch again and go to touch, and, maybe go to a tree or whatever your environment is, and really start to feel and pay attention to what you're feeling. So, and then you go through the senses as you walk, and it's a beautiful little exercise you could do anytime, anywhere. And that's what is accessible. This is stuff we could be doing all the time to feel better within our own bodies and become present.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So it's easily integrated into, into normal, healthy pursuits and pastimes that all of us are pretty much equipped to do, who are physically capable. And I noticed, again, in researching the exercises, that some of them that I've found on YouTube seem to have almost a qigong, or a kind of sort of a physical cadence to it, or sort of practice to it. And that's another thing I found attractive about it, is it is, as you mentioned, you can go for a walk with it, but you can also participate in not strenuous, but somewhat active exercises, which I think is great for people with maybe mobility issues, who are a little older and can't necessarily go and do all that crazy Pilates, or even certain yoga moves and things like this. Seems really accessible to people who, including myself. I work outside and I do physical labor, and so when I get home, I don't want to do anything really crazy, but I still want to keep my body tuned up. But
and it is accessible, to anybody with a disability as well, because when you're bringing in your mind into the body, your body is your own. So you adapt whatever you're noticing in your body. It's really about observing your own body. It's not about observing someone else's. And it's really about understanding where emotions sit in your body. So regardless of, your physical way of moving in the world, you can still adapt, everything that we teach and everything that we can sort of offer as far as what sophrology takes you through. And it's, the philosophy side is based on Eastern philosophies, which is yoga, we do Zen, and we do Buddhism, and then all in one, so really going a little bit deeper and understanding the connection. And in our visualizations, because we do a lot of visualizations, so generally you'll be sitting, lying, whatever is comfortable for you. We suggest you sit, because there is a tendency to fall asleep if you're guided through some relaxation, especially after a day of work. But I actually do a Mind Body Connect class now, where I believe, people should be comfortable. So if they don't feel like sitting, all I ask them to do is have the arm up, so the elbows resting on the floor as well. So if they're falling asleep, you sort of wake yourself up.
Yeah.
That was a one of my teachers told me when I told her I was going to be running these classes. So, and it works, definitely works. It wakes you up, that just kind of, you know, as you're just drifting off. So you can do it lying down.
Oh yeah. That's a great trick. That's definitely a great trick. Yeah, that's one of the things when you and in my meditation practice, I'm okay with the fact that sometimes I fall asleep, because I usually meditate at night right before bed. Some people get up at 4 in the morning and do it, but I usually do it right before bed, because then I'm in a really good relaxed state before I go off to sleep. But if I do happen to fall asleep in my meditation, I'm perfectly fine with that, because I'm still hearing what's going on. And yes.
It gets in there, you know, regardless.
Yeah.
It's going in. So it's really important what you're listening to, you know,
Oh,
especially,
sure.
you know, those times as you're falling asleep, and that moment when you're just waking up, they are the times of transformation, really. They are the times of setting your brain up for a great day, you know, because whatever you're going to sleep with, that's what you're going to wake up with.
Sure.
So
Sure. Yeah. Can you speak for a moment to the places in the body that sophrology focuses on? Can we talk about that for a minute?
yeah, absolutely. So the body's broken down into 6 systems. So the first system is the head. And so when we release tension from this, and the reason why we break it down into smaller parts is because then you can focus on what's really going on in this region. So the head, and initially we will go, you know, I'll sort of ask people to really focus on the eyes, the ears, and also the space between the eyes. If you've ever read, there's a great book called Brain Focus. I think it's called the Open Focus Brain.
Okay.
And it really, you know, so I incorporate a little bit of that in there as well, where you focus on the space between things. So even if you're going for a walk in nature, after doing the exercise, you sort of start to notice the space between the trees, which gives you energy. So once you can gain, you know, you really understand the energy that's happening in those different systems as well. So we have the first system, which is the head. The second system is the neck and the outer arms and the outer hand. The third system is the chest area, underarm, and the palms. And the reason why the hands are separate is because the nerves. You can focus on the inside of the hand because of the nerves that you feel there, and you can focus separately on the outside of the hand. So then we have the fourth system, which is from the solar plexus to the navel. The fifth is from the navel to the toes or the legs. And then the sixth is the whole system. And again, it's broken down into these smaller bits because you can then put your focus there and you can see what's going on in that area. If you've got any pains, or, you know, a lot of the time in different modalities, like if you're doing energy work and you have some pain, you'll focus on certain areas. Within sophrology, you can learn to know where that area is and start to observe it. And then you understand your body and, you know, whatever you choose to do to heal those areas, you sort of have a better idea of what's going on for you. So when you go to seek, whether it be medical advice, whether it be holistic advice, you've got something else to go by because you're actually really going inwards and understanding yourself rather than going out and just asking someone to diagnose you. So yeah, the body's broken down, and then releasing the tensions. Again, we touched on that. You know, the energy centers, you can call them energy centers. We choose not to call them chakras just because of the judgmental part that comes into that. But we say nerve plexus. And again, we've been taught nerve plexus because it allows people to go, what is that? And we say, well, this area here, there's a bundle of nerves. And this is where generally, if you go into where do you feel happiness? So you'll ask, it's really, this is a funny story. So when I work with kids, it's really interesting in how kids relate to their bodies and how an adult will probably say, I feel it in the gut, or, you know, depending on the feeling that we're talking about or the emotion. They'll say, I feel it in the gut. I feel it in the heart. I had a child the other day and I said, where are you feeling that? And they went, in the arm. You know, so kids have a different way of expressing, and it's just, there's no right or wrong. So there's no where you should be feeling these emotions. It's just where you feel it in the body. But I love the way, I think as you get older, you become a little bit more rigid in, no, this is where I'm meant to feel it. And you're looking for a right or wrong answer.
Mm-hmm.
And with a child, you're so open, and so I think, training in sophrology gives you that aliveness to feel curious and to go, hey, could I experience it there?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where am I? So you have a better way of understanding yourself as you learn the difference and the techniques, and understand when your body feels good and when it doesn't. And so it's all of that.
And I think that's good that it's distinguishable from, again, as you said, the Vedic traditional systems, because they like you said, they tend to carry a charge that may not necessarily want to convey into what sophrology teaches. And I've gotten to the point now when I talk to people about that stuff, I just say, I look at it metaphorically, and it's what was a beautiful proto-psychological system where, all these different little energy centers represented a series or set of emotions or feelings. Much like you said, the child would represent it in the arm, or and so, but some people, it that way helps diffuse that sort of dogmatism that can arise and say, oh, well, it's this is blocked, and it's like, well, maybe it is, but this is a mind process, at the end of the day. So that's how I reconcile anymore with that stuff. Is it's just a beautiful metaphor, and that's probably what they meant 5,000 years, whenever in the Indus Valley when they came up with some of these ideas. It was meant more as a representation and sort of metaphor for.
And it directs your mind, doesn't it? Everything's directing your mind to an area.
Yeah.
So where with sophrology, we're getting you to release from certain areas, so where that release button is.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are stressed during your day, shortness of breath, we can focus on that third system, just break it down rather than look at the whole body. Let's just focus on that third system, and let's just do some breath work. And that's where the Eastern philosophies, back to your question about the Eastern and the breath work, and the Qigong, and yes, they are all included, and it's really about the breath work. Especially through the yoga components, breath work is so important. Every session that I do, I give a type of breath work, depending on whether we need energy, higher energy, or whether we need to relax and calm the brain. If it's an anxiety, then let's just find out how we can calm easily during your day using some breath work. So if you don't have time for anything else, going to the breath and then noticing the breath going into the body and out of the body, you can start to relax.
Yeah.
So, and it's that awareness again.
Yeah, absolutely. What a beautiful utility our breath is, It's life-sustaining and both autonomic and controllable at the same time. So breath is it's an essential component for this kind of work, I think.
Yeah, what's really interesting, just on breath work, when when we were never taught how to breathe, and it's just those things we're expected, just go out and breathe. But myself growing up, until I started doing a lot of yoga in my teenage, later, like 18, 19, I was breathing in the reverse, which I notice kids do all the time. I teach a lot of kids, and adults, and then you grow into this adult that breathes in the reverse, and you think that's how you breathe. So when I say breathe in, you're like sucking in that gut, contracting everything. So a really important tool that I do with everything is asking people to breathe and feel their lungs, and get that abdomen pushed out. And I do think it's a play on words, because we say breathe in, literally a kid will go and just suck everything. And I think I did that for many, many years, and because you're not taught how to breathe. So it's great that things like yoga and mindfulness and meditation are now in school systems, in the Western, because we need to know how to breathe properly to have more energy in these bodies.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. As well, and we'll get to this later in the conversation, because I want to talk to you about your work with children. what a wonderful system to bring into education to help formative people, young people, learn to process stress and possibly trauma. When I grew up in the 70s, you dealt with it. It was stoicism of some sort. You just dealt with it and don't complain, because I can tell you a worse story than what you just, that kind of mentality. Yeah. So there was no outlet other than to punch, bully somebody or get bullied yourself. So the fact that we're trying a little more civil means of helping children process what is relative to age is a very stressful time. I mean, as adults, we can get jaded and say, oh, you don't know what suffering is, but when you're 10 years old, it's relative. So,
that's right. Feelings are for feeling. So whatever that is, for each individual, you have to acknowledge it.
Absolutely. But we'll get to that in a moment, because I would love to cover that with you. So I'd like to, and we talked about this before we started our conversation on this interview. Sophrology's current footprint, well, let's just say in the last 20 years, had been quite small, and it was sort of tucked away in Europe. And so can you talk about the more recent history with sophrology and what's going on? And you mentioned to me that there was a critical time in 2012 where there was this availability that had not yet been actualized by way of English. So can you give us a little background on that too?
Yeah, so sophrology was only taught in French. So in the 60s and the 70s, it was used in the medical industry. It started to be looked at, in schools, and it started to be looked at for stress, anxiety, PTSD, and then high performance. So in 2012, it was actually my teacher, Donna Reevy, who runs, and I'm trained in Sophrology. She translated the method of Caicedo. She studied with Caicedo, and she also, I'm quite sure, don't quote me on it, but I think she did meet Schultz as well. So he was one of the teachers of the school at the time. And so she translated this into English and then developed the school, and then it went online. So for the longest time, it's also been in the Geneva police departments, and it's been in all sorts of medical. It's used in childbirth and as a technique to calm, again, whether it's pressure in the job, whether it's pressure in a stress, in a exam situation, pressure of childbirth, and just not knowing what to expect, to be able to calm the mind and relax the body in any of these moments is where you're going to become more centered and grounded and be able to think more clearly. So it's been used in school systems and through, France, Switzerland, and Belgium especially. So it sort of has gone out through Europe that way. And now in 2012, the first English-speaking sophrologists have been trained, and the idea was you can do with a group. You're in a classroom online, studying online, but you do residentials in Switzerland. Now I'm aware that there's also a school in London as well, but in London, when you go to the UK, I think it's a monthly, in-person session that you need to be doing. So for someone like myself in Australia, and I know a lot of Americans, to just go over for these residentials for a week is a better way to get qualified, an easier way. Yeah.
All right.
So and then since that, so just to talk about Australia, so when I graduated, so I'm currently, I'm just over a year that I've graduated since studying. So it's very new here, and I was only the third. And now since I think there's another 2 that have qualified. So it's a very slow, considering it was started up in the 60s, it's slow to come out here. I know there's a few more in America that have graduated, and a lot of the time, if you're looking for a sophrologist, you would go to the International Federation of Sophrology, which is a website, and then it sort of has members from different countries, and it has gone into Asia, Hong Kong, Singapore. There's people qualified in Singapore. There's a couple of New Zealanders too now. And we do have monthly catch-ups. So it's it's a great community.
Nice.
You know, as far as sophrology, because it is new to a lot of different countries, to have this community where we can log on once a month and talk to colleagues, you know, from across the world, and get an understanding of what they're doing there and how they're experiencing sophrology and how it's being experienced by their clients. You know, it's always different in different places because culturally it's different. So but the techniques we offer are always the same. It's how it's how you've been brought up to feel these areas. So
yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that's one of the saleable or more attractive standouts about sophrology is it's not laden with a lot of complexity, in the sense that it may not work well in translation, say if you take it to Japan and or to somewhere that's maybe more of the Abrahamic belief system, like in South America, where everybody, you know, there's a lot more Catholicism. I don't see where that would impinge upon anybody's, unless you're a really deep fundamentalist and everything is, you know, off limits. But for more progressive belief systems, I think this is something that you can work with and apprehend without too much concern. And you know, it's interesting. You mentioned, I think it was the Vienna police were working with this.
Geneva.
Geneva. I'm sorry. And I reached out to a guy in the States. It's Richard Gerling, I think, and he runs a program called Mindful Badge. And so he's on the West Coast of the U.S. in Oregon, and he teaches meditation to police officers, and I think that is just so cool. So if he gave me sort of a tentative yes to an interview, but if I can get him on an interview, I want to bring up sophrology to him and say, because I think he's teaching more of a sort of an old school Buddhist meditation system, which, you know, is perfectly obviously good. And but yeah, wouldn't that be great if here in the United States, you know, I mean, you read the headlines, everybody's on edge, and so I just think that's such a great idea to equip first responders with that, for their own sake, as well as their ability to process the stress in real time when there's a situation, you know, the de-escalation factor, as well as situational awareness. I think if you can be a very mindful police officer, you're better protected, knowing your environment. Like you were saying, out for a walk and the salience opens up and you see the space between things a little bit. That's great for situations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm hoping I get him on board, and I'll definitely mention sophrology.
I've actually got a colleague who's a police officer who I studied, and I can pass on her details too, who's actually qualified now as a sophrologist. She's one of the sophrologists. So as far as taking it out into first responders, she's definitely doing that and sees the benefit already. So that maybe they can help.
Yeah. I know it's mindfulbadge either .org or .com, but mindful badge, that's easy to remember. And I just thought that was so great. And I had been a firefighter years ago when I was in my late teens, early 20s, but it was a volunteer, but it was full-time because it was a small community, and I didn't go through too much stress, but it happens. You see car accidents and you see a lot of trauma, and they kind of laugh it off, but at the same time, that kind of thing will develop into, you know, PTSD for people after a while. So I only had a very small taste with 3 years of it, but I can imagine a career that it's essential to have an outlet that's healthy.
Yeah, you know, and it's also the way the mind works. So we get so many I think it's like 70 billion, you know, thoughts are rushing through the brain any given moment, but and we only choose to focus on so many. And in those moments, so I feel like with sophrology, what we do, we train the brain to focus on, you know, the happier or positive, whichever word resonates, you know, because you have that positive, you have that negative, but you've also got that neutral. And so that's where that integration pause can really help, because you can stop and then train the brain in any given moment. You've got a choice. how to look at this situation. But you need that pause, because otherwise the thought comes through, the emotion gets, energy in motion, and it's triggered something in the body. So it's really understanding, I think with sophrology, you really get that choice and of what are you going to choose in this situation. You can either go based on your past, you can go into the future, what's going to happen, or you can stay neutral and make that choice. And generally, the more you practice the choice of a good feeling or a different perspective of this situation, you're going to choose something that's going to feel better in the body, because, you've already released so much through tension release. You don't want to put that back in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I heard something before I got on the call with you, I was watching an interview with a woman, Sebeni Selassie, I think, and she just put out a book, and she's a Buddhist teacher, mindfulness teacher, and also a cultural activist here in the States. And she made a really good point that just never really occurred to me, at least not on the surface, that with the narrative of trauma, there's also, we're not necessarily taught the narrative that there is resilience too. So in other words, we can feel and understand what, not even just trauma, but it's just a bad day or a dramatic situation. But the idea of resilience being sort of its counterpart that's complementary, and you can bring that forward in processing that. Reminds me of what you were just saying, that you keep in mind when you're in that moment of examining where something's coming from, that you have that innate capability of resilience.
And you have that, I think, because we use past experience so much, it's such a habitual thing to look at a new situation and go, this is just like, oh, I've experienced this before, I know what's going to happen. So you don't give room for something new to happen a lot of the time. So it's really, I think, when you can stop, pause, and look at a situation as if it is for the first time, and you'll notice those old thought patterns. They're still there, but it's more of an observation now until it completely disappears, because you've got, stronger pathways now to base your belief system on. But I do think in those moments when you train yourself to give yourself the choice of how to see this situation for the best of everyone involved. Any modality that's going to give you that is going to be a benefit to yourself first and everyone that's around you.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. And then there's you talked about the non-judgment, and when you can, as you said, be the observer, but detach that charge of judgmentality, whether it's towards yourself or maybe your counterpart, your interlocutor, or whoever it was that you're trying to work this through with. That non-judgment is, it seems difficult at first, but with practice, I notice in my own life that not only with mindfulness, but just trying to understand a situation and seeing that there's a dynamicy that has to be understood, that I don't get as freaked out about things as I used to. As a matter of fact, one of my big things in life was confrontation, and I thrived on it because I was raised by somebody who sort of imprinted that on me. And so it took a while, but I got into the idea of that's not necessary at all. And with rare exception, something can happen, and I may have an initial reaction, but I can quickly just say, well, it's in the grand scale of things, this is not anything important or significant. And I understand why maybe X person did something. And I always, as a matter of fact, my wife, she's probably sick of me, because she's so close to me. I can always just, whenever she's having a bad day, and I'm always like, look at the cause, not the symptom, and just try to understand more about the cause than what you're experiencing with somebody. So if somebody comes up, like you said, and triggers you, or something happens, you can understand why perhaps that happened, but the other why as to maybe the deeper thing, that's the phenomenology of what's going on underneath is more relevant. And when you can understand that, then you can't be mad at the person as much as you might want.
That's right. It's only, if you're taking something personally, that's all about you.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's how I see it. It comes down to the 4 agreements, the Don Miguel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that four, no judgment, don't take things personally. I forget the other two. I know the fourth is always do your
Yeah,
best. Oh, don't make assumptions,
right.
and I think in life, if you can actually remember those things,
Hmm.
it just, if that could be your first thought every time you're triggered, don't take this personally, because whether it's you or the other person, there's something going on there that possibly isn't true.
Hmm.
It might be true, it might not, but it's how you perceive it, it's how you take it on. And you've always got a choice on what
Yeah.
you do, and sometimes maybe you do have to say something, sometimes maybe you don't, but it's never going to be the same situation because it's never that same moment.
Absolutely. I'm struggling to get through a book right now called The Rationality of Perception, and the author, she's a professor at Harvard. It's an epistemological evaluation of perception, which, who knew perception was so complex? But she has a theory, and there's other theories. It's called epistemic downgrading. So what happens when you are in a situation, you read facial language, you interpret what somebody says to you, but it may seem like real-time objective interpretation, but there's also a background where you have built-in cognitive distortion. And so in that distortion, you're going to take that in a particular way. And she uses examples like if a woman walks into the room and she sees her significant other and he's got a particular look on his face, she's predicting that there will be drama or something like that. And so to another observer who doesn't know this person very well, they wouldn't interpret that. So she's sort of pointing at that. And it's a good way of looking again at this kind of phenomena with how you can catch yourself before you expend so much time and energy and neurochemistry on getting upset and
Yeah, no,
making your, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
absolutely. I understand all of that actually.
Yeah.
And especially in your closer relationships, you're always observing that person. And it's almost like you're predicting, exactly what you said. You do predict, but it's only from your own way of thinking and your own perceptions. Something new has happened to that person that's brought them into that same facial expression, but yet we look at them and we do make those judgments. And this is the thing with judgments again. We say try to hold your judgments. It's not that you don't make judgments or you can't, it happens automatically, but it's noticing that you are judging that makes the difference. It's not that I don't walk into a room and my first 30 seconds is, scanning the room and going, oh, I like what she's wearing. And there's all these many different judgments. It's not that I can catch myself doing it. I can catch myself and I know none of it is relevant.
Yeah.
The only thing that's relevant is how I make other people feel, how I listen, how I understand, the situation or the environment that I'm in, and how I make the best of this,
Absolutely. And how amazing is it that you could go into a room with 15 people in it, and by carrying that sort of energy or mentality with you, and you can almost influence how that evening is going to go. So there could be actors in that room that may be of the other end of that spectrum that are oh look at her, doing this and that. But if you just bring that in and you interact with people, it's amazing. I can't speak to any specific situations in my life, but I think in theory there's an influence there where you can come into a room and be a better presence for the entirety of that social sphere, that environment. So it's great. So the judgmentality is key. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when you said presence, and that's what you bring into the room with you, and that's an energy. I think science is now very much on board. Everything is energy. We are energy. So when you bring your energy into a room, that is going to be felt. So going into a room and understanding and having the intention of just delivering, a pleasant situation or a pleasant environment, something maybe harmonious for everyone, that's going to change this, a room, as opposed to you rushing in, not taking the time to pause, release what just happened, your work day, going into, maybe if I'm teaching meditation, if I took in, a really busy, stressful day, which it can be, if I don't release that first and I walk into new clients or a new environment, or maybe just a social scene with friends, I'm just going to bring that in there. So it may take, I could still maybe release it and unwind and relax, but it's going to take a lot longer, as opposed to me stopping and going, hey, I can feel this in my body. I'm just going to let this go and, go into this with new eyes, a new feeling and a new presence. So, I think that's what you learn.
Absolutely. And at the very least, in that evening, in that scenario, you may just attract the people who are going to be more fun to be around and engage with, because the people who are sort of in a stinky mood are just going to, she's too happy. I can't deal with that. So at the very least, you're going to attract people in and you're going to have a great time. So there's that, if anything, that's a good selling point, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we went from 2012 through the teens, and as you mentioned, it's slowly emerging in Australia and into the United States. What could you put on your prediction cap? I mean, what do you think is going to be the future of sophrology?
Well, if I go with my own visualizations of what I want to achieve,
yeah,
I'm always, we do futurization. So me walking a timeline and seeing, what I can achieve, I believe in slow growth, because I think we may have touched on it outside of the recording, but we touched on things that grow really fast and they just become a fad. Now, sophrology wasn't developed that way. Sophrology has been around since the 60s. So if anyone's looking for information, there's a ton of articles, there's science papers behind it. There's so many things. So for me in Australia, it's really important that it's seen as something that's here to stay. Okay. And it's not seen as the next thing you just take around on a tour. So I'm now working at getting the message out about sophrology. I've got my business set up and I'm running classes, and I've also developed a mind body connect class, which gives people a taste of some of the exercises we do. And it allows just anyone from the general to come in and, just have an experience and start. And the more they come, obviously, the more they will connect the mind and the body. And that's what it's really about. At first, it's really just feeling better and understanding how you can help yourself to feel better. Because I don't believe people can give you advice, people can give you tools and techniques, but at the end of the day, you have to be inspired to then use those. And then once you're inspired, you might be motivated to try something else. But you need to, so the idea for me is to really inspire people to try it and see the benefits. It's not going to be for everyone because different people need different things. I've bought it into, so I've been running a kids yoga business also. I'm a family yoga teacher, meditation teacher. And so I've been fortunate to bring this into a lot of my work, especially if I have teenage clients. It's such a, it's such a awesome group of exercises and tools that I can change and sort of put together in a way that will suit the individual when you're dealing with, especially teenagers, I find. And I can also take them into workplaces and schools. So my idea with sophrology is take it into as many places to give the idea of what it's about and to give an understanding of how to have a relaxed brain and continue having a calm and alert mind, to be able to feel that, those bodily sensations as well, and understanding how you use your senses and how the more you focus on your physical sensations in the body during your day, the more present you become. So the more I get that out there, the more sophrology will grow. And now that there's more sophrologists being accredited, and so having these monthly meetings and setups, hopefully we can start to see more sophrology, in different areas, and it is growing already. So, things like this, you've reached out to me, and it's wonderful. So I'm really appreciative of, you taking the time and bringing sophrology onto your podcast as well, and I just think it's happening already.
Yeah.
There's this feeling of, it's people are starting to learn about this. It's like anything new, although it's not so new in Europe.
Yeah.
Here it is, it's still new, but the fortunate thing is there's so much information to go by because it was already pre-existing before, I graduated here in Victoria, or other people have graduated in the other states. So it's already out there. We just have to bring it into our environments.
Yeah. What does your practice look like pre, post, and pre, during, and post COVID? So obviously, you probably are sort of online mostly right now, or with precautions. I know you had mentioned in one of your interviews you've been through various lockdown phases where you are in your community. But going forward into post-COVID, is this something where you get people together in a group and practice sophrology? So it's kind of like when people get together to do the yoga or the qigong or any tai chi or anything like that, there's 15, 20 people and they get together either outside or in a room. Is that sort of how sophrology is practiced through either your practice or anyone else?
Yeah, it's really changed from, 2020 to right now. So during 2020, we were in a 4-level lockdown here in Melbourne. So we were doing online programs. So that in that time, I collaborated with a gym owner, a local gym owner, and that's Mickey's Fitness. And his name was Mickey White. And so we collaborated on the project to bring fitness and sophrology together, and we ran these online programs, and they were really successful, where we had 50% of the people from the first program sign up to do the second program online as well. And that was partly due to it helped the individuals, but it also gave them something new to do during their day, because we were meant to be out for only 2 hours a day, and only essential shopping, and we're in a state where we can freely move around. We're asked to wear masks if we're going into a shopping centre or a supermarket. So given that, I do run classes where they're in, face to face, and I run one session in a studio space where, we can hold about, 20 to 30 people. And this is the Mind Body Connect class, which I incorporate a bit of just spinal work to release, and move the spine, and some tension release. And then we do a sophrology session with the exercises are always changing. And I make it very general, because the norm in sophrology, if I'm working with a one-on-one client, we kind of start with happy sensations and sitting to exercises where sometimes you're standing and sometimes you're walking. And you're doing dynamic movement. So you're doing exercises where, you're holding tension in the body and then releasing. And, so a lot of it can seem like some Tai Chi. There's some Qigong in there as far as the movement is concerned. With the yoga, it's more breath work. We don't do yoga poses, but we do use a lot of the philosophy of yoga. So, and the movement is quite simple and small, and you just need a small area. So we're not, walking around for too long, except if you're going deeper in the levels and, you start to go outside and you take these walks, and because you want to be able to take these tools into your everyday life. And everyday life can be busy. So you want to be able to prepare your body or calm your mind and still stay alert in any given moment. So having tools that you've practiced that allow you to do that, I think is very beneficial. So I'm doing them in person. At the moment, I still have online clients, even though we are free, because they're in different states. And that all came about from last year because of the COVID, and having to only do online for a long time. Actually, I think we were in lockdown here. It could have been going on to 5 months or 6 months. I can't even remember now. So we were in lockdown a long time. So there was a lot of online, but I personally, that connection, that we were lacking, it feels so much more important now to me. Being in person and having energy exchanged in a room is really, I feel the benefits of that are just, they're so important, and you can feel it. You can feel a person walking out feeling better.
Mm-hmm.
When I shut down my computer, I will always ask the questions, but you don't know what's happening really on the other side. And so I'm fortunate that I can do online, but I love working in person. And especially with, if I am working with kids, then it's really important to notice how they're behaving and how they're taking to it, because a lot of the time they don't want to sit still.
Yeah.
So to do online, it's distracting almost to sit still, because the body wants to move. Yeah. So when you're in person, they can move freely and they can be themselves, which is the more relaxed state, rather than asking, a child to just sit quietly still and listen to me. I feel like there's a big difference in what the client will gain being in person or online.
Yeah, absolutely. What a gift to be able to work with children too. I'm sure that's got to be very rewarding. And I think you're a parent, aren't you? So
I am. I've got 3 boys. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, bless your heart. You have 3 boys.
Yeah.
That's a handful. Oh goodness. But it builds resilience, right? Yeah.
It builds my resilience.
Yeah, you're going to be a Jedi master when you get done with 3 boys. There's nothing you can't handle. So you can incorporate that into your teaching.
That's right. Every modality I choose to take on is really about me learning so I can be a better parent.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's great. But yeah, it has to be, it's got to be a whole different world, but also, again, very rewarding, because children are so, you've mentioned this in the interview, they're so spontaneous. They're not attached to, any of this dogma or anything like that. And so, yeah, it's got to be really neat to work with youngsters.
Yeah, I love it. And that, I've been teaching kids, and I teach from the age of 2. So it seems like a very young age, but it's amazing how quickly they adapt to a repetitive program, as long as it's repetitive. And then, kids look forward to things, but they're always experiencing it for the first time. So they know I'm coming in to do yoga, and I add some sophrology. And with kids in sophrology, we call it ludic games. Ludic is a French word, and it's just fun games where it's about tensing the body, making it like a rock, then releasing, pretending and this doesn't always work for all kids at different ages, because some are more introverted, some are more extroverted. So you'll find some kids don't want to pretend. I think a lot, I was before I was a parent, like, all kids love pretending. I loved pretending, but it's not the case. Everyone's individual. So it's being mindful in a class to do things that can include everyone.
Right.
So if there's children that don't want to participate in the games, they're generally still sitting in the circle and taking it in, and still able to laugh and have an experience of their own. And I love that. I love that it's sort of, you bring whatever you have to give to these individuals, and they experience it in their own way. Yeah. And with, children's yoga and sophrology, that's what I've been able to do. I've been able, even with 2-year-olds, go in and, do some repetitive things that eventually they all do participate. But it's just, they look forward to it as much as I do. So, nice. Yeah. And I think it's really because it's a consistent thing for them. So it's not it's a fun one-off one day, but then when they realize it comes every week, I think you just build momentum. And I've been teaching kids, for the last 10 years in kind of kinders and, you know, in daycare centers as well. I'll go into daycare centers and schools. And I've found that in my local area, the kids are now, some of those kids that I started when they were 2 are now, you know, in that 9-year-old bracket area, and they still remember, you know, things. They'll come up to me in the street, and that's really rewarding, you know, for them to have that memory of yoga in their childcare. Or it's great.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And as time marches on, you'll have young adults walking up to you, and I don't want to age you too fast, but yeah, but think about how satisfied you're gonna or grateful you're going to feel to know, because you know somebody's going to come up. Oh my God, if it wasn't for you, I would have, you know. They would give you some beautiful story about how you changed their trajectory a little bit, or gave them a means of doing better and being better. Yeah,
or just giving a tool, you know. I think a lot of the time in the work I do, it's more about planting a seed. So I've got 3 boys, and they've all done my classes, because when I started doing this, I always started with where they were. So I would go into their kinders or their schools and, you know, work and volunteer, and I still do that. So where if I've got time to go in once a term and just teach a class with their classroom, and that's been so beneficial, because at home my boys don't want to meditate with me or participate in anything that I'm suggesting would be good for them. You know, it's such a different dynamic as a parent. You know, they see me as a parent. They don't see me as, you know, the sophrologist or the kids yoga teacher so their experience of me is so different, and that's grounding and humbling, because they do not see me as that person. They see me as mum, you know, and, you know, it doesn't matter what I'm trying to give across as part of, you know, the information, they're going to take it in the way they take it in from mum. So, you know, I'm hoping that the seeds were planted a long time ago, and they just, you know, they know what meditation is about. They know what mindfulness is about. They know what sophrology and yoga is about. So in their own time and space, they can, you know, get onto it, or they might choose something else, but it's there. I know it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking as a male, or somebody who identifies as a male, I think it's critical that boys be given an outlet and an opportunity to understand that you don't necessarily have to adopt the persona of the rigid, tough, you know, ultra masculine. You know, you can be a masculine man, you can be whatever that how that works out to be for you, but that, you know, it can get to an imbalanced state, and so that if you can have an outlet, you know, like mindfulness or sophrology or even yoga, that it's okay, you know. So in other words, you know, here in the United States, it's, you know, all about machismo, and you know, I cut my arm off, it's all right, you know, it's just a scratch, and, you know, I can take it, and, you know, and I just don't think, and seeing that interview you had with Mickey and Diana, he's a big guy, and he was so present, and he was so I don't even like the word humble. He just had this presence to him, that a good humility, you know, that he's a masculine man. He's a guy, but he's also capable of just recognizing what this work is about. And there's nothing emasculating about it. There's nothing that's should be off-putting to anybody about that. So I think the world needs more of that medicine, you know.
Yeah, I agree, actually. You know, just being more conscious of yourself and more aware of yourself, and more willing to understand that there's some good things out there that, you know, they may not seem masculine, but life shouldn't be about that. You know, what is keeping you in a box, and, you know, what you can experience if you walk out of that box. So, and he's a really good example of that. So it was lovely doing that work at the time. Absolutely.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. We definitely need examples like that. Well, I have been chatting with you just over an hour, and I would like to check in with you if I would like to talk about your practice and your business, and the folks who are watching this, I want to make sure they have access to what you do. So let's say somebody's watching this, and so are you good with a few more minutes then?
Oh, yeah.
Carry on just a little bit more. Okay, because I do want to make sure that we cover that. So if somebody's watching this interview and they're interested in your work, as we were just discussing in the COVID era, that you've had to adapt rather to being online. And so you are set up for that, and you can, I assume you can bring people in and work with them in that sense,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a similar thing to, you know, running a podcast when I'm doing it online. So again, all you would need is a chair. You don't need much. You don't need too much room around you. And, you know, and then we tailor, if it's an individual program, we just, you know, talk about what is it that you'd like to get out of these sessions? What is it you'd like to possibly work on? And then we just tailor it. And it's really about just every session feeling better and feeling more yourself, you know. So yeah, it's how I work.
Okay, and I'm going to make sure that all of your links are accessible in the description field of this video, of this interview, so that people will be able to access you. So you obviously do sophrology, and you mentioned that you work with yoga. What else can you talk about that you can provide for people?
Yeah, so I've done, you know, lots of shorter courses as far as life coaching, and I'm just completing counseling at the moment.
Okay.
And that's in order to, with sophrology in Australia, because it's not a recognized modality as yet, it just allows me with counseling to sort of branch out a little further and be recognized. And because sophrology can be brought in as long as the client is willing, we then can use the sophrology techniques, you know, to give tools. And so I've got that as well. The meditation, I'm a qualified meditation teacher, which I've been doing for a long time as well. And so all of these, basically everything that I do it is on the website, but everything I do is really about self-awareness. So whether we're using, I find sophrology can help, and they all interrelate. So I find sophrology can help with your meditation practice, because as you're guided, you start to recognize that you can, you know, be still, you can go into the body, you can just focus on the breath work. And so depending on the meditation technique that suits you, then you can look at meditation and then take that further. Or as far as mindfulness, you know, having these experiences where you're open to observe behaviors and open to, you know, just understand how you're feeling, and giving yourself the opportunity to, you know, choose a different way to feel once you understand that you have that choice in any given moment. So, and then the yoga, you know, most of my work is in the yoga. I go out. I don't so much do that online. And that is because I do generally work with kids and families in yoga. So a lot of those are pre-booked, and I'll get booked for, you know, terms or, you know, quite a few sessions. And I do corporates as well. So I'll go in and do, you know, some lunchtime programs where I can fit them as well.
Very cool. Very cool. And you mentioned coaching. And so is it personal coaching, business coaching, or are you dynamic in that sense?
Yeah, so I sort of bring that in, and it's more life coaching, personal coaching. And that's more about just setting goals. So using the timelines of sophrology. So I sort of use the sophrology techniques for that as well. So using timelines. So if there is a goal in mind, you know, and so we look at the steps to achieve it, and we look at how you feel during those. So you keep walking this timeline until you've got it right, and you visualize the different ways to get there until it feels, this is the way I can do it, and this is the way I'm going to achieve what I, you know, what my goal is. And you just break it down in smaller little segments. Okay. So as you get to one segment of your goal, you know, there's an achievement there, and learning how to acknowledge that for yourself when you break it down, so it's not, you know, so overwhelming and you have to achieve this big thing. Because what I find is when I've worked with people on this sort of timeline coaching is that that end result can change. You've got the flexibility because you're breaking it down. You can, other opportunities open up as you're breaking that down. You still have something that you're working towards, but it opens up opportunities in every different section. So that way we can fine tune it, and you can change it, and that's what life is. It's forever adapting to change, and especially, you know, in the last 2 years with what's happened around the world, it's really about adapting to this change. So if you can learn that with one thing, I believe you can learn that with other areas in your life as well.
Yeah, and that's brilliant that you don't want to take a big bite on something and not be able to chew it, so to speak, and
Yeah.
so to step back and if you have to, compartmentalize things a little bit, and then within that landscape you can, like you said, you have a better perspective on what's available to you.
Absolutely. And it also gives you that clarity to know what the steps are and who, if you're contacting or if you're having to do work to gain some strengths in the area that you're moving towards. When you break that down and you see that as an achievement in itself, it's confidence building, you know, and it's the belief system that you need to build for a lot of these things. So when you're believing a belief system, when you're building, a belief system within yourself, you're able to step forward. You know, so with everything that you build, you take another step forward. But what direction you go in, you know, having that flexibility is so great, because sometimes we think we want one thing, and as you start walking towards it, your mind gets changed because of circumstances, or, you know, maybe something else opens up. And so this allows you to just to look at it in a broader perspective, you know, and take in all of it and then sort of walk towards where you want.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah. Spontaneity in that creative process is a great combination.
Yeah.
So.
And that's, you know, being creative is the key. And that takes you back to the attitudes, you know, knowing your attitudes, knowing your values, you know, being curious, you know, seeing it like a child.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, with everything that you've, you know, gained over the years.
Right. Right. Yeah. The wisdom.
Yeah.
That you can apply. And again, getting back to sophrology, to be able to have a means of releasing fixed patterns and programs, as you mentioned, and making yourself more available to present moment thinking and processing and things like that. It's just a beautiful complementary system to that kind of coaching, and getting people to recognize their creative power once they understand what might be tethering them to their perceived past.
That's right. And a lot of the time it's having clarity. I think, you know, in life, it's not that you don't want things, but it's not being clear on how to get there. So using things like a timeline when you're coaching is a really good way to, you know, to frame it in your mind so it's achievable. So, you know, you can adapt to the changes of the environment and the people around you and stuff, but you've always got this clear intention of where you're moving. And that clarity is what is really important, because otherwise it's, you know, you mentioned Abraham before, and I do listen to a lot of Abraham, and, you know, it's not, you're saying one thing, but your thoughts are saying another, and you're off track. And so when you walk a timeline and when you do things with your physical body, and then you bring the visualizations and you bring the feelings of every step that you take before you even take them into it, you've already trained yourself to achieve something. You know, now that achievement may change, but you're prepared to achieve something. You know, your body's ready. So, and I love that, you know, we can get ourselves ready for things.
Yeah. Mental rehearsal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've even heard some stodgy old science people say, oh, you know, it's the visioning process. It's incontrovertible. You know, you can go down a lot of different paths of speculation as far as how we create, like the whole law of attraction thing is very speculative, but really with visioning, it's very well grounded in
Your
how,
body, yeah,
yeah, and the
your body.
imagination. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and that's, in high performance, that's what we do. It's understanding those pressure moments and understanding that, you've practiced this in your mind over and over again to achieve this.
Mm-hmm.
So the body sensations that you're feeling, whether it's clammy hands, whether it's, if you don't recognize those coming on in that split second, then the mind takes over and it can take you anywhere. But if you recognize those bodily sensations that are happening physically, then you can bring yourself back to that calm place and focus on what you've already practiced. So, and that would be the same as any sort of, big event that you want to achieve, or that's coming up for you, and you want to feel calm and relaxed and do the best possible job that you can do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's actually cool. So that was what Alfonso bought into, and it was called modified autogenetic training. And that's what, as a sophrologist, we use in high performing.
Okay. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we were able to have this time, and I'm so grateful to you for coming on and having a conversation with me, because you pointed out we're platforming Sophrology here, and it will be available for the world to see, and I have confidence that it will receive some viewership and some attention, because when I found it, it's been maybe just over a year, and when I found it, I thought, what a precious little gem that's here, that doesn't seem to have caught people's attention. I mean, it has. Let's say if you're in Western Europe, they would laugh at me for saying that, but where we are, it's still sort of a new frontier, and so it's great that something like that can rise to prominence and have a role to play in how we sort of forge ahead as a species and as a culture and a society to have yet one more good utility to temper our nature, to understand ourselves, and to generate greater expressions of ourselves. I think is one thing I like to see. It's great, just changing who we are in a good way.
Absolutely.
So
living life.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I mentioned, I will make sure that all of your information is provided in the description field, and hopefully people will call on you. And you have such a comprehensive system, and I think that's great. The cliche one-stop shopping came to my mind. I wasn't going to say that. I'm going to say it as a kind of a joke, as an aside, but really, I mean, it's great to have that and to be able to get with one person, because you obviously are going to make connections with people and form a type of bond as a practitioner with somebody who, and then you can be dynamic in caring for their what they're bringing to you. And I think that's really great. That people don't have to bounce around between 3 or 4 different people to get, a global system of transformation or management or whatever it is they're seeking. So that's great that you have that asset.
Yeah, I think that's because I've always done it from myself first. So, and to have had that opportunity to have those experiences of doing all these modalities for myself first, that's why I'm passionate about it. And that's why, I love serving this, and giving this out to the community. And it really comes down to how it makes me feel first, and how it's helped me, and, and how I notice my environments and the people within, my units, my family, my social, and how I am in those areas now, as opposed to when I had a lot of my past, and they're still there, but it's that I can notice, so yeah, I love it, and I am passionate about it. So thank you very much for, this opportunity as well.
Yeah, no, it was very mutually beneficial, and in a third sense, it's beneficial for, again, anyone who discovers this this upload, this video. I think there's a lot of good information here, a lot of discovery to be had. And so, yeah, it was a very productive conversation. I'm going to keep an eye on your work, and maybe we can get together down the road and do another, do a follow-up, because it would be fun also to, and I don't want to make this one too long, but you can talk about transformation anecdotes of people who you've worked with. And I think that would be also a good conversation. So maybe I'll give you a few months to a year, and I'll connect with you again, and we'll see if you, and maybe you'll have a new project, maybe something new will come. That's why I say I'll keep an eye on your work, and if something new pops up, I'll be like, time to check in with Sophie. but I think that would be a fun conversation to, you can give some feedback as to, person X had an X transformation. I think that would be really neat to hear. That's
I'm excited. Sorry, I feel like I'm excited to even having this conversation with you about where it can go. Mm-hmm. There's so many different possibilities of where this can go, because it is new. Yeah. So, and that's one thing about bringing something new into a country like the sophrologists that would be in the States. You've got opportunity. It's just a matter of seeing it and then following that direction. So, and this avenue of podcasts and, you asking me to join you on this, I'm so grateful for it, because, if anything's going to bring it to light, it's going to be these conversations. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's mutual, because I'm now wiser about sophrology, and I'll give a little backstory on what my plans are for the future. Is I want to do workshops with people, and there may be an opportunity for integration with the sophrology, because I have the Idea Cast series that we're doing right now, but it's also tied into a project I have called Illumin Life, and that is all audio exercises. It's all mindfulness, and it's that what was it? Sophie Liminal. It's getting late for me here. Yeah. Sophie Liminal. Sophro. Anyway, you said it. It's after 10, so my brain's shutting down. Yeah, I'm going into alpha now. So, but anyway, I call them hypnotations, and it's sort of that guided meditation. But the work I want to do revolves around a lot of kind of what you were saying. What I'd like to practice is helping people to recognize their narratives, their personas, and the stories that they sell to other people about who they are, and our apprehension of ipseity, or the sense of I-ness, the being. And as you've mentioned in this interview, that we are one in a sense. Not only are we a single species, but we are a species of consciousness. So there's a meta species thing going there. And I want to work with people to, as an integrated practice with other things that they can do outside of what I teach, to just understand that loosening your apprehension of the I-ness, and so people would call that the ego sometimes, to balance and dial things in a little bit, is where I want to work with people. And so that's why, again, sophrology was attractive to me, because I thought, if or my wife, I'm sort of trying to get her interested, so maybe she could do that. But while we're doing a workshop, for half an hour, people can stop doing what I'm doing, and we'll go into some of those sophrology exercises. And I think that would be a beautiful tie into what I'm doing. But yeah, that's my vision. That's my dream, is to eventually do small groups of people, 25, 30 people in a room, and just spend a couple of days learning to recognize things, recognize patterns, and then let go. Because I think you and I are on the same page. It's like the less you are attached, and Wu Wei kind of plays into this, is the less you're attached to identity and the narrative, the cultural narrative, the normatives of how we express ourselves, but as well as your relationship to any narrative. That if you can just be flexible, and again, like the Wu Wei or the Tao, you can just kind of be a little more flowy. Be water, and just and it's easy to talk about, but I think if you can get in a room with people and spend a day or two with them, focusing on it and having a lot of fun doing it, make a kind of fun environment out of it. So anyway, that's kind of showing my cards about what I'd like to do down the road. But getting back to sophrology, I think that might tie in nicely with how I can work with people, because
Yeah, please let me know. I'll keep up to date with what you're doing as well in this time,
yeah.
and keep following.
Yes, yes. We'll follow each other's rise
Yeah,
and success, and I measure success less in terms of monetary, but more in terms of impacting people's lives,
absolutely.
and having people like with the children you're working with. Have somebody come up to me and say, you really made a difference, and I appreciate that. And I'd be like, well, great, that's awesome, and now you can go out and make a difference in somebody else's life, and so that's the best reward. And you're doing that too, and sometimes you can kind of focus on what we could see as possibly being negative in the world, and you have to touch in with that sometimes just to have salience. But I think also getting with people like yourself, and that's, I'm doing a lot of research. That's how I found you. I'm finding a lot of amazing people in the world who are change makers and solution oriented people doing beautiful things, and so it's really been and not whatever the opposite of disheartening is, as pro-heartening or
Yeah,
heart
I know.
lifting or whatever it is, to see this
It's
on the
inspiring,
internet.
isn't it?
Pardon?
It's inspiring.
It is. It really is, to know that there are people of all ages. I'm in my early 50s, and so I spent the first 40 something years of my life just being a person doing stuff, But in my
Yeah,
early 40s, I
control.
realized, yeah, it's just life. Like, you're a parent and you have things, and so I'm through that phase now. I'm in a more comfortable position where I can be of service to people, and less focused on me and more focused on the community. And so and again, that's why one of the reasons I saw you and I thought, oh man, this is great, to get somebody else of sort of a similar mind, to get on board and have a conversation. So I thank you very much. I'm very grateful, and I'm changed for knowing you now in this way and having this conversation. So that I'm appreciative of. And like I said, I'll touch base maybe later in the year, fall, maybe early winter, and we'll see about maybe doing another conversation. Because like I said, I think what you're doing for people would be great to hear some stories, some feedback, testimonial type things.
Yeah,
Because if people like this interview, then that would be a great follow-up, is for
that's
some
great. I'm
anecdotes. So
very happy to be on board with that.
wonderful.
I
Wonderful.
think, human stories are of interest. That's what we like to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever I read a book, I can go through somebody providing me information, but some books are more, some are less, but they'll tell a human story, and they'll give an example of something that happened. And that's when my lights turn on, and I'm like focused on what this person did, and so, it's so powerful,
It's the connection again. It's that connection. It's that human connection, and that's what I think. That's what we need.
Yeah.
We need to interact. We need to tell our stories. We need
Yeah.
to, connect on that level.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, it's just data.
Yeah, it is. It's cold and impersonal, and that it's the sort of proof of concept that we can see somebody else has done something remarkable or transform, or they transcended something, and it's an acknowledgement for ourselves that, oh, okay, and that breaks some limitation barriers, I think, in terms of your own transformative journey. So. Well, Sophie, thank you so much. Again, you've been very generous with your time. I think we've been an hour and a half, and that's beautiful. I was, glad for an hour, but to do an hour and a half of good content, that's really beautiful. So you have a beautiful rest of the day where you are in Melbourne, and I'm going to go off and go to sleep. Get ready for.
It's lunchtime. It's just after lunch here, so
yeah,
it's a beautiful day.
Oh, it looks very sunny where you are. So yeah,
It is, actually. It's quite warm outside. I'm inside, so I'm really gearing up to get outside.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we're just getting into spring here. I live in Florida, so it's spring gets here early. It's usually like late February. Like right now, mid-March, it's starting to heat up. Tomorrow's almost almost 90 degrees tomorrow. So whatever that's like upper 20 Celsius. So
lovely.
Spring happens really quickly in Florida.
Oh, well, Melbourne, I don't know if you've heard, is like 4 seasons in one day. So today is a hot day. We've just gone into autumn, so we're opposite. But it's a summer's day today in autumn. We can have anything really,
Right.
so being adaptable is really important if you live in Melbourne, so not being
I
not
would
being
say
set
so.
on seasons is really
Yeah.
important.
Absolutely. I was shocked because I was checking your local time and they would do the temperature and it was in Fahrenheit, it was in the low 50s. So like what the teens in Celsius. And I thought it's still summer in Australia or in, where you are. And I thought, wow, the mornings are cool there. And so
Yeah,
but you
can
probably
be.
go up into the 30s during the day, right? And gets really hot.
Today's about 30 Celsius. But yeah, it can vary. Like
Mhm.
there's no, I don't think you can follow a plan for seasons here. If you were to come to Australia, especially to Melbourne, not so much the other states, you pack for all seasons.
You're ready
That's
for
one of
all.
the rules.
That's good advice. And hopefully
Yes.
I'll get over there
Remember that
sometime.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to see Australia. I'm a palm collector because again, living in Florida,
Oh,
so Australia has some amazing palm trees. So that's
yeah.
one of many reasons I'd love to come over and see Australia
Yeah.
sometime. So
Absolutely.
when travel lightens up a little bit and we can be more mobile. As a matter of fact, if I could do workshops, I would love to come out and, it's obviously an English speaking country. So I'd
Absolutely.
be able to do my thing over that way. So anyway, well, thank you so much. Again, I very much appreciate it. And I know this interview is going to have legs of its own and it's going to have a good life. It's going to have a good life. So,
Thank you.
and I'll say goodbye to you after I stop record, and we'll check in with each other. And but thank you very much for being on the interview on the IdeaCast series. And like I said, I'll just hit pause and then or stop, and then we can talk for a second.